Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Hello Neighbor, the secret neighbor party game. This is going to be based on the popular video game to a degree, but taking that and putting it into the hidden role genre. Games like Resistance, Secret Hitler, Feed the Kraken, which I recently reviewed, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, all of those style of games. And this game is going to have a handy dandy quick start guide as well as a actual rulebook in case anything gets complicated, and it's actually pretty simple to get going. Step 1, pick a leader. Step 2, deal out the role cards. And that's going to vary based on the player count of the game, but let's say a 6-player game is going to have 4 kids, 1 actual neighbor, and 1 secret neighbor. That's a secret neighbor who doesn't actually know who the other neighbors are. You'll shuffle them up, you'll deal out the role cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You will look at your own roll, and then go from there into step 3, where you're going to deal out the object cards. You're going to take these cards, shuffle them up, deal them out, giving 4 cards to each player. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the idea, and we'll put the rest off to the side. Then from there, you're going to go to dealing out the keys, and again, that's going to vary based on player count. You have these nice chunky keys over here that are going to be the way you're trying to win the game is by getting these keys, and either as the neighbor getting these keys and getting your way into the house, or as the kids taking these keys away from the neighbors and stopping them from getting into the house. And so, you're going to deal out those keys, and then depending how many players you have, again, in our case we have a 6-player game, so we're going to put 2 keys into the middle, put this other key off to the side. We can look at it lovingly as we move on to step 5. Step 5 is you read the script. This is going to be a typical script for these types of games, in which you say, everyone close your eyes, secret neighbors open your eyes, kind of that situation, or I think neighbors open your eyes, secret neighbor put your thumb in the air, basically trying to give the information to the table from the people who need it, because if you are a kid, you have no idea anything except for the fact that you are a kid. If you are a neighbor, then you know all who the neighbors are, and if you're a secret neighbor, you know yourself, you don't know the rest, and so that information is going to change how you view the game. I might be, in my case, I'm a secret neighbor, so I know that there's another person out there who's on my team. I sadly don't know who that is. Versus someone else on the table over here, maybe it's this one, nope, that's a kid, is going to know that I am on their team, and the kids, they have no clue what's going on. This person over here that we just randomly looked at, he's got no clue what's happening in this game, and he has to figure that out as the game progresses, which brings us to the trading phase. In the trading phase of the game, all those items you got are going to be traded back and forth. You're going to sit there and say, well, I have a box, I really like to get my hands on a magnet or a trash can. You're going to go through the various items in the game. Those items are going to be key because from those items, that magnet is how you're ultimately going to get your hands on keys, and keys are ultimately how you win the game, regardless of which team you're on. Keys are how you win the game. You have to get your hands on those keys, and then once you get your hands on the keys, you still have to pass a group vote that allows you to actually utilize the key, which is an important part, because if nobody trusts you, well, then they're not going to let you into the house. And so that is basically the game in a nutshell. You go from there, you're going to have these cards traded around and around and around until the phase is over. Once all trades are done, you're going to go to actually utilize those phases. So perhaps we use our trash can, and I'm like, you know what? I don't trust Rachel over there, so bye, Rachel. You have to discard your entire hand. Now, perhaps I'm a neighbor, and Rachel actually had magnets, and who knows what's going on, but you're going to use these keys that have, not these keys, you're going to use these cards that have multiple abilities or options on them to drive the conversation forward. You see, in any single hidden role game, in any game of this genre, you need some sort of information present in order to drive the conversation forward, whatever that information might be. It might be people just saying something, it might be a mission you go on like in Resistance or in Hello Neighbor. That is going to be these cards. These cards, the way you utilize them, to which effect you utilize them, how and who you target, what you try to trade for. All of that is going to drive the conversation forward in order to determine what you know or don't know in this game. Once somebody has a key, or doesn't have a key, if nobody actually gets a key, you're going to move on to the next round, rinse and repeat until you get some progress and momentum forward. Once somebody has a key, there will be a vote as to whether you allow them to utilize that key, and if you do, if the neighbors get into the house with the key, the kids instantly lose, versus the kids have to successfully prevent the neighbors from using all of the keys. So the more keys there are in the game, the harder it's going to be for the kids to win, because they have to last each of those keys out. And so that is ultimately Hello Neighbor, the secret neighbor party game in a nutshell. And to begin with, in terms of what I like about this game, to start with off the bat, I mean, it's a hidden role game. This genre is a genre that I very much enjoy. I can't remember ever playing a hidden role game that I didn't enjoy. How much I enjoyed it in comparison to what is a different conversation, and we'll get to that. But off the bat, when I've played this game every single time, it has all the boxes that I like checked about hidden role games. It has that element of either deduction when you're a good person, or alternatively just keeping things secret when you're a neighbor. And either of those are fascinating to me. Either of those are things I love. Having the conversation as to why Rachel targeted Jack, why Lacey was over there pointing fingers at me. Having those conversations is key, because Lacey's clearly a neighbor. Otherwise, why in the world would she use the garbage can to discard my hand? I had the magnets. I was gonna get the key. I am good, but really, as you saw already, I'm a secret neighbor. And so that hiding who you are, or figuring out who someone else is through the mechanics at play, through that conversation of what happened, why they did it, how the conversation is moving forward, all of those things are present in Secret Neighbor. All of those things are continuously going to be what I like about hidden role games. And really that's primarily what I like about this game. I mean, we have chunky keys as well. We have a variety of items and objects that will have different effects in terms of how we drive that conversation forward, because the same exact item is going to only result in so many different configurations of people trying to think out how that plays before a game gets boring. The variety of items is what's going to keep this game fresh to a degree, because pointing fingers at someone's use of the trash can or pointing fingers at why someone wants to trade for magnets will get boring at a certain point. But having those items, having that mix-up will result in different configurations of that conversation each and every time. And those primarily are going to be the main things I like about this game. As far as what I didn't like with the game, there's a lack of complexity in the roles themselves. The neighbors ultimately, the roles in this game are ultimately kids, where you're just a kid. There's neighbors, where you don't know where you know each other. And then there's a secret neighbor. So that's ultimately going to be the main roles in this game. For me, one of the things I like most about hidden role games is the complexity and depth and the variability of different roles in that game. If you like Resistance, Avalon, or whatnot, which I love, mixing it up with different roles changes the experience. It adds layers to the game. If you like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, adjusting the roles that are in the game produce a totally different puzzle every single time. Any of these games with any of their roles going on, that changes the puzzle, it changes the picture. And for me, Hello Neighbor just doesn't have that variability. The variability is going to come from the items, which brings me to the second thing I don't like as much about the game, which is the items. While they do drive the conversation forward in different directions, I found most of these items to be not as satisfying as I would have liked in terms of what they do, what they add. Mostly people end up hunting for magnets or perhaps levers because they can steal someone else's card right as they use them. But the rest of the items in the box lets you see someone else's roll, which is fun, but can only be utilized a certain amount of times before it has to be shifted to something else. So the cards let you do stuff, but a lot of the items weren't as exciting or rewarding, and people often didn't go for them. Nobody really wanted to trade for trash cans or flashlights most of the time, because, I mean, flashlights are the most disheartening because it lets you steal a card from someone else's hand, stopping them from doing something. But then you have 2 cards in your hand, and you can only actually use an ability once you have 3 matching cards, and that means you go from having 4 cards to having 2 cards, and you still can't do anything with it. And so many of these cards, or some of these cards, I would say, did not feel as rewarding or as interesting, and therefore weren't sought after. I would like to see in this game a handful, even if you're not going to do anything different with the rolls, I'd like to see a variability of the items they introduce, different ways to mix up that puzzle, both to change the puzzle, as well as to have, well, frankly, more exciting items. Past that, the last thing I didn't like, and this is going to be a big one for me personally, and understand that I can easily see other people having a different experience, but in this game, I have found so far that the puzzle that's presented, the roles and the picture being pushed, it doesn't change as much as I would like game to game. What I like in this style of game is the fact that there's so much back and forth as to how things played out. They did this because of that. He did that because of her. She did this. In this game, because of the nature of the items, there is less complexity and depth into the way the conversations played out. Now, I can see easily people not having that problem at all. I can see them playing it and being like, well, we never saw any clear patterns established. In this game, because of the way the cards play out and because of the items and the lack of the variability in the roles, we found that it did tend to drop into a few different game states every single time that we played this game. As far as what I can see others not liking, I mean, I think really just one thing, which is the theme in this game, I think, is going to be a complete miss if you don't know the original IP of this game. If you know the original IP, well, this makes sense. This takes that theme and puts it into a board game that is accessible, easy to teach, and fun to play. But if you don't know Hello Neighbor at all, then this is just a weird box art of some guy trying to interact with kids and steal keys. So I think this game would be a complete miss for anyone who's not familiar with the IP. I would say argue even more than a complete miss. It might be almost off-putting because Hello Neighbor and a bunch of kids. You need some sort of background as to what's going on there. As far as my final thoughts on Hello Neighbor, this is a game that is not currently staying in my collection, but it's worth noting that, to begin with, I've only played this game at 5 and 6 players. I have not played at higher player counts, and I can see that changing the puzzle, especially with my critique as far as how the game states are a little bit more stale than I would like. For me, this is a great introduction game to the hit and roll genre. If you haven't played hit and roll games, if you're a fan of Hello Neighbor and you're jumping in here, I think this is a great, fun puzzle to play with. At the end of the day, for myself, I can't see myself really wanting to pull it out to the table over games like The Resistance or over One Night Ultimate Werewolf. In terms of Resistance is going to have more of the structured game state that this game provides, and One Night Ultimate Werewolf is going to have a bit of that cartoony, crazy chaos that, well, this game provides to a degree as well. But at the end of the day, I do recommend Secret Neighbor as a good introductory hit and roll game, but one that if you've played others, this probably isn't bringing enough new things to the table to add it to your own collection. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, have a good one.